Everybody has a past, but not everyone understands it today. We're diving deep into why reflection is the real teacher. Let's begin. There's a common belief we all grow up hearing: experience is the best teacher. We hear it from parents, teachers, mentors, and society at large. It's often repeated like a sacred mantra, the ultimate truth passed down through generations. And yes, experience does teach. Life experiences mold us, test us, break us, and shape us. But what if I told you that experience alone is not the teacher? What if the real teacher, the one that gives meaning, wisdom, and power to experience, is reflection? Think about it. How many people do you know who have gone through decades of life but seem to have learned so little? They've lived long, maybe even done many things, but they repeat the same mistakes, harbor the same bitterness, and carry the same regrets. On the other hand, there are people, even younger ones, who carry a wisdom so deep it shakes you. They speak not just from what they've lived, but from what they've understood about what they've lived. That's the difference. That's the power of reflection. Reflection is the quiet space between moments where meaning is born. It's the pause after the storm, the silence after the chaos, where we ask, what just happened? Why did it happen? What did I feel? What did I learn? And what can I do differently? Without this step, experience is just a collection of moments, some painful, some beautiful, some random. But with reflection, even pain becomes a lesson, failure becomes feedback, and life becomes a wise teacher. Imagine a man who's been through 3 failed marriages. He blames each ex-wife, claiming bad luck, wrong timing, incompatibility. He's had experience, sure, but no reflection. Now imagine another man who's been through just 1 breakup. He sits with the hurt, journals about the fights, replays the conversations, confronts his own flaws, and owns his part in the breakdown. That man is wiser, not because of how much he went through, but because of how deeply he processed what he went through. Our culture worships action. We glorify the hustle, the grind, the achievements. But we often forget to value the pause, the sacred pause where reflection lives. The truth is, we learn in the experience, but we grow after the experience. Growth happens in the stillness of a reflective mind, not just in the rush of doing. Experience is external. It's what happens to us. Reflection is internal. It's what we do with what happens to us. And in that space lies the real power. Let me take you into a moment that changed my life. I was sitting at my father's funeral. The room was quiet, heavy with unshed tears and unspoken emotions. People were sharing stories about him, his sacrifices, his humor, his quiet strength. But all I could think about was the last argument I had with him. I had been too proud to apologize. Now I'd never get the chance. That day, I didn't just experience grief, I reflected on it. I asked myself why I held on to ego, why I didn't soften sooner, and what I truly valued in relationships. That painful reflection transformed my approach to every connection in my life moving forward. Not the experience of the loss itself, but the reflection that followed that was the true turning point. So many of us are running from one experience to the next, like thrill seekers chasing adrenaline. We try new jobs, new relationships, new hobbies, but we never stop to reflect. And then we wonder why nothing feels fulfilling, why we keep ending up in the same emotional places. Because without reflection, experience becomes repetition. But with reflection, experience becomes revelation. In business too, this is true. A failed startup can feel like a waste unless the founder reflects on the mistakes, the blind spots, the misplaced priorities. Then that failure becomes the seed of the next success. The same applies in relationships, parenting, friendships. If you don't reflect, you'll carry the same wounds into every new situation. Here's the emotional truth: reflection takes courage. It's not always pleasant. To reflect means to face your own role in your pain, your mistakes, your blind spots. It's easier to just move on, distract yourself, say, it is what it is. But reflection forces you to feel. It asks you to confront the uncomfortable, to dig deeper than excuses and look straight into the mirror of truth. And that mirror doesn't always flatter, but it liberates. Some of the most emotionally resilient people I've met aren't those who've had the easiest lives. They are the ones who took time to reflect on the hardest parts of their journey. They made sense of the suffering. They found patterns. They asked the hard questions. They learned. And they came out not just stronger, but wiser, softer, more compassionate. Reflection is not about ruminating endlessly or staying stuck in the past. It's about extracting gold from your memories, turning raw pain into polished insight. It's about being able to say, this happened, and here's what it taught me. That's power. Even when it comes to joy, reflection deepens our experience. A vacation is just a getaway until you reflect on the beauty you saw, the feelings you had, the memories you made. Love becomes richer when you reflect on why it matters, what it heals, and how it shapes you. Gratitude grows through reflection. So does empathy. There is a quote that says, "We do not learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on experience." It's not just a clever phrase, it's a call to a deeper life. A life where nothing is wasted, not the pain, not the joy, not the heartbreaks, not the victories. Reflection doesn't require special tools. It requires honesty. Sometimes it looks like journaling. Sometimes it's a quiet walk alone. Sometimes it's a heartfelt conversation with someone who helps you see what you can't. And sometimes it's just sitting with your own thoughts and emotions long enough to hear what they're trying to say. We live in a noisy world, a fast one. Everything screams for our attention. But the deepest answers come in whispers, and we can only hear them if we reflect. So today I invite you to pause. Think about a recent experience, good or bad. Don't just relive it, reflect on it. What did it show you about yourself? What did it awaken in you? What lesson does it hold? That's where the treasure lies. Because in the end, a reflective life is not just a smarter life, it's a richer one, more meaningful, more grounded, more awake. And when you meet people who reflect deeply, you feel it. Their words carry weight, their presence feels safe, their choices seem intentional. That's not just because they've been through a lot, but because they've learned from what they've been through. That's the kind of person we all have the power to become. Experience happens to everyone, but reflection? That's a choice, a powerful, life-changing choice. It's a quiet truth most people overlook, that wisdom doesn't come automatically with age or experience. It comes with understanding, and understanding only arrives through reflection. The world is full of people who have lived long but learned little, because they never stopped to make sense of their journey. Life handed them experiences, both painful and beautiful, but they never paused long enough to ask the most important question. What does this mean for me? We all crave meaning. We want to know why something happened, why we made that decision, why it hurt so much, why we felt so alive. But meaning doesn't emerge on its own. It's not built into the experience. It's built inside us when we slow down and reflect. Reflection is not just memory. Memory recalls the event. Reflection rewrites the story. It turns raw moments into narrative. It puts emotions into context. It lets you become the author of your past rather than just a passive reader. And in that authorship, we find healing, growth, and identity. Think about how we treat scars. Some people hide them. Others show them off like battle wounds. But the real value of a scar is not in its appearance, it's in the story it tells. The deeper truth is, you only get to own that story when you reflect on it. Without reflection, a scar is just pain. With reflection, it's strength. We live in a world obsessed with novelty, always chasing the next big thing, the next trip, the next promotion, the next relationship. But without reflection, even the most exciting life becomes shallow. Like a beautiful movie watched on mute, you see the motion, but you miss the message. Reflection gives you subtitles to your soul's journey. Let me share another moment this time, a personal failure that changed me. Years ago, I was offered a job I desperately wanted. It aligned with everything I thought I had worked for. But I walked into the interview nervous, underprepared, and full of self-doubt. I didn't get the job. I was devastated. For days, I replayed the rejection in my mind like a broken record. At first, I blamed them. But then slowly, I started to reflect. Why was I so afraid? Why didn't I prepare better? Why did I shrink myself? The reflection was brutal, but it uncovered something I hadn't faced. I didn't believe I deserved success. That discovery became a turning point not just for my career, but for how I spoke to myself, how I prepared, how I carried myself. That one failure through reflection became the seed of all my future confidence. Without reflection, it would have just been another painful memory. And isn't that the case for all of us? How many rejections, heartbreaks, and disappointments do we carry without ever unpacking them? We say that's life and move on. But inside us, those moments stay unresolved, unprocessed, and heavy. Reflection is how we lighten the load. It's how we break the pattern. We reflect not just to grow, but to release, to forgive, to understand, to let go, or sometimes to hold on, but with new clarity. In relationships, reflection is the difference between growth and repetition. You might leave one toxic friendship or relationship only to find yourself in another just like it. Why? Because the experience wasn't the teacher reflection was. If you didn't stop to ask yourself, why did I allow that treatment? What did I ignore in the beginning? What did I truly want? And what did I settle for? Then you're likely to repeat the same story with different characters. That's the emotional weight of unreflected experience. It loops. It traps. It deceives you into thinking you're moving on when you're really standing still. Reflection breaks the loop. Even in joy, reflection expands the soul. Think about a time you laughed until you cried, a moment you felt completely free, alive, whole. Now reflect on why it moved you. You'll discover it touched a deep longing. It fulfilled something in your spirit, and knowing that can guide you to more moments like it. Reflection is not just about analyzing pain, it's also about amplifying joy. Sometimes reflection looks like solitude. Sometimes it's therapy. Sometimes it's art, music, poetry, painting, anything that helps you express and explore your inner world. It's a mirror that doesn't just show your face, it shows your soul. And yes, it's hard work. It's easier to stay busy, to scroll endlessly, to bury the past under noise. But real peace doesn't come from escape. It comes from understanding. That's what reflection gives you. Peace. Not because life gets easier, but because you become clearer. I remember once meeting a man in his 70s. He had this incredible presence, calm, kind, deeply aware. I asked him, "What's your secret?" He smiled and said, "Every night I ask myself what the day taught me. That's it. No fancy rituals, just reflection." Over decades, that simple practice turned his life into a well of wisdom. You don't have to wait decades. You can start today. Take a journal, write down a recent moment that stirred you. Ask, what did I feel? What did I believe? What was I afraid of? What did I learn? The more you practice, the more you'll begin to see patterns of fear, of strength, of growth. You'll begin to know yourself, not just the version others see, but the one that exists in your quiet thoughts. And that self-knowledge? It's freedom. Because when you understand your past, you stop being controlled by it. You become intentional. You choose differently. You love more deeply. You communicate more clearly. You forgive more easily, not just others, but yourself. So many people walk through life carrying shame they never examine, regret they never name, dreams they never give themselves permission to revisit. Reflection opens those doors. It invites you to sit with your younger self and say, "I see you. I understand now. Let's grow." Reflection doesn't promise to erase the past, but it promises to transform it into insight, into meaning, into wisdom. And ultimately, that's what we're all searching for, not just a life full of experiences, but a life full of understood experiences. Because that's what stays with us. That's what we carry into old age. That's what we pass on to others, not just our stories, but our understanding of those stories. When we die, people won't just remember what we did. They'll remember what we understood, what we stood for, what we made sense of. That's the legacy of reflection. Experience gives you the clay. Reflection molds it into something meaningful. Don't let your life be a pile of unshaped moments. Create something with it. Sculpt your pain into strength, your confusion into clarity, your past into wisdom. Because in the end, reflection doesn't just make us smarter, it makes us more human. There's a kind of beauty that comes from a well-reflected life, not the beauty of perfection or ease or public approval, but the beauty of depth. It's the beauty that shows in a person's eyes when they've taken time to sit with their past, to search through the wreckage of their mistakes, to hold their joys with reverence, and to find meaning in moments most would overlook. It's the quiet strength of someone who doesn't just live, but understands how and why they live. That's what reflection gives you. And that's why, in the long run, it is more valuable than experience alone. Experience might be accidental, something that happens to you. But reflection is intentional, something you choose to engage in. Experience can be given. Reflection must be earned. Anyone can go through something difficult. Anyone can travel the world. Anyone can succeed or fail. But not everyone will slow down enough to ask, what did this really mean? What was life trying to show me? That question is the golden thread that turns ordinary lives into extraordinary stories. Let's look around us. The modern world moves fast. Everything is optimized for speed, fast food, fast communication, fast success. We're taught to keep moving, keep achieving, keep consuming. But wisdom doesn't move at the speed of Wi-Fi. It moves at the speed of the soul. And the soul only speaks in stillness. That's why reflection is so rare and so priceless. People who reflect tend to walk differently in this world. They respond rather than react. They pause before speaking. They seek to understand before judging. They are not controlled by ego or fear or insecurity because they've spent time sitting with those parts of themselves. They've studied their own patterns. They've looked themselves in the mirror and asked hard questions and waited long enough for the answers to rise. That work is invisible, but its results are undeniable. And yet it's hard because reflection requires humility. It asks you to admit you don't have all the answers. It asks you to take responsibility for your role in your own suffering. It asks you to be honest about what you felt, what you feared, and what you avoided. Many people would rather blame the world or their past or other people. That's easier, but reflection doesn't let you stay in blame. It calls you into ownership. One of the most powerful reflections I ever heard came from a woman who had lost her son. She said, "Grief broke me open, but reflection put me back together." She spoke not just about the pain of the loss, but what she learned in her silent hours, how much love had been there, how deeply she'd grown as a mother, how fragile and sacred time really is. That's the kind of strength reflection creates, the kind that doesn't deny the pain, but transforms it. And it's not just personal. Even in leadership, reflection is key. The best leaders aren't just those with experience in the field. They're the ones who reflect on their failures, who debrief after meetings, who listen to feedback and think deeply about how to do better. They don't just chase results, they seek understanding. That's what creates sustainable impact. In parenting too, reflection is everything. It's easy to repeat how we were raised, to default into autopilot, but a reflective parent pauses, asks, why did I react that way? What does my child need in this moment? What part of my own story is being triggered? That's how cycles are broken. Not by just being different, but by understanding why the past looked the way it did and making conscious choices for the future. When you reflect regularly, you start living on purpose. You start noticing your own growth. You become a student of yourself, and that's the most important education you'll ever pursue. Because the more you understand yourself, the more you can understand others. The more compassion you build, the more depth your conversations carry, the more meaning your days hold. Without reflection, life can feel flat, like you're running on a treadmill, moving fast but getting nowhere. You may check off milestones, degree, job, marriage, children, retirement. But you might still feel a hollow ache inside, wondering what it was all for. That's because the soul doesn't thrive on milestones. It thrives on meaning, and meaning only emerges through reflection. I remember a mentor once told me, you don't really live a moment until you reflect on it. At first I didn't get it, but over time I saw it was true. I could spend a weekend with friends, full of laughter and stories, but only when I sat alone afterward and reflected on the warmth, the connection, the depth. Only then did the memory root itself in my heart. Reflection gives emotional weight to experience. It locks in the lessons, the gratitude, the transformation. But here's something even deeper. Reflection doesn't just help you understand the past, it helps you reframe it. And sometimes that reframe can change your life. Let's say you went through a betrayal. At the time, it shattered you. You saw it as a loss, but through reflection, maybe you realize it was a turning point the moment you learned to set boundaries, to know your worth, to stop depending on validation. Suddenly, that experience becomes not just a wound, but a blessing in disguise. Not because the betrayal was good, but because your understanding of it evolved. That's the gift of reflection. There's even a neurological basis for this. Studies show that when we reflect on our experiences, especially emotional ones, we activate parts of the brain associated with emotional regulation, problem solving, and empathy. Reflection literally rewires your brain. It builds emotional intelligence. It improves decision-making. It makes you a better communicator, a more present partner, a more grounded human being. But it has to be practiced. Just like muscles grow through repetition, reflection deepens through consistency. You can't reflect once and expect enlightenment. You build a reflective life by building reflective habits. Start small. At the end of each day, ask, what moved me today? What did I learn about myself? What drained me? What energized me? Hey, did I live in alignment with my values? What am I avoiding that I need to face? Write it down, or speak it aloud, or sit in silence and feel it. The method doesn't matter, the intention does. And don't be afraid of what you'll find. Some reflections may bring tears, others may bring shame, but sit with them. Let them teach you. You'll find that even the darkest memories hold seeds of light if you're willing to look closely enough. Over time, you'll begin to notice the power of this practice. You'll start catching yourself before repeating old patterns. You'll hear your intuition more clearly. You'll become less reactive, more mindful. You'll start making decisions not from fear or pressure, but from wisdom. Eventually, reflection becomes a lifestyle. You start living every day with your eyes open, not just to the world, but to yourself. You begin to honor your own growth, even in small moments. You find peace not because life is perfect, but because you understand it better, and you understand yourself better. And in that place, you can offer something precious to the world: perspective. People are hungry for that. Not just information, not just advice, but honest, thoughtful perspective. And that only comes from a life deeply examined. So the next time someone tells you experience is the best teacher, remember, it's not the experience that teaches, it's the examination of the experience. That's where truth lives. That's where transformation happens. Reflection is the soul's way of breathing. Don't hold your breath. Let yourself exhale. Let yourself learn. Let yourself grow. And when you do, you won't just live, you'll live well. With clarity, with depth, with intention. And that kind of life, even if quiet, echoes forever. If you believe in growing through what you go through, subscribe. Every word here speaks to the soul.